says in Bhagavad Gita, Yukta ahara viharasya, Yukta cheshtasya karmasu, Yukta swapna avabodhasya, Yogo bhavati dukkhaha. What is yoga? He defines. He says appropriateness of moderation in living is yoga. Very simple definition. There are many definitions of yoga. Somebody thinks of yoga as a lot of asanas, contortions, and various poses and positions of the body. Somebody thinks of yoga as deep state of meditation or losing one's consciousness into a higher state of communion with the divine. Some people think of yoga, especially in the modern terms, as simply an existence where you eat vegan and wear cotton or something like that. But beyond all these things, Sri Krishna defines yoga very simply. He says moderation. What kind of moderation? Yukta. Yukta means appropriate, correct, the right way. Yukta ahara viharasya. What you eat appropriately. Vihara. Wherever you go, whatever you go about doing, do it appropriately, do it in the right way. Yukta, desires, chesta. All your activities which are undertaken to fulfill desires, let them be in moderation. Karma, for the chesta, let both be in moderation. Right kind of desires to be achieved through right or appropriate kind of actions. Yukta swapnavabodhasya. Even in sleep and in wakeful state, appropriateness. Not too much of sleep, not too much of being awake. Everything in moderation, because moderation is yoga which destroys all the sorrow. Dukkhaha. It destroys all the sorrows. India is the land of yogis from the time immemorial. And this message of yoga was given by Indians. Today we celebrate the International Yoga Day as we do. And everybody comes together to do yoga on that one day of the year in some patriotic fervor. Just like we come to hoist a flag on 15th of August. But Indian idea of yoga is a daily practice and not a very difficult one. It simply says, do things appropriately. Do things as is needed, as is required, not too much, not too less. Ati, sarvatra varjayet. Extremes is not yoga. Moderation, balance is yoga. So when we talk about developed country, we were talking about a country which is based on this idea of moderation, idea of correctness, idea of appropriateness, not extremes. On one end, extremely wealthy, on the other end, extremely poor. On one end, extremely capable, on the other end, extremely incapable. On one end, extremely healthy, on the other end, extremely sick. That is not the country that we are talking about as a developed nation. We are talking about a country where there is balance of everything. And everybody is following that balance. The richest also, though materially rich, is also moderated in his way of life. Opulence should not be ostentatious. That is yoga. And poverty need not be misery. Poverty in the sense, you may not be the billionaire, but yet if you have whatever is said, roti, kapada, makan, education, health, you are a satisfied person. Satisfaction is the true indication of one's happiness. Now we talk about human index, happiness index and so on. But that alone cannot be the only criteria. The idea of being happy within, not because of the material comforts that one has, one who is happy within. And a yogi alone can be happy within. Nobody else can be happy. And who is a yogi? Who lives a life of moderation, who lives a life of correctness, appropriateness. He is a true yogi. Such a person is always satisfied and happy because his expectations are very moderate. So also his actions are moderate. He does not swing to either sides in excitement or in depression. He's always in the steady state of consciousness, more or less in the center. And that idea of life is Indian way of life. We never have to compete with anybody to become happy. We have to only understand ourselves, what gives us true happiness, establish ourselves in that idea, and we are happy. A musician may not be a very rich musician, but he can be a happy musician. And therefore, he is a yogi. A teacher need not be the most wealthy teacher, but he is satisfied with what he is doing. Therefore, he is a yogi. A political leader may not be the most popular leader of the country, but in his own sphere of influence, he is able to make a difference to people's lives and he is happy with it. He is a yogi. So also a spiritual leader need not have millions of followers, but he is able to influence a few and help them walk this path. He is also a yogi. The idea of happiness and success, which has been given to us by the modern narratives, always equates success with wealth or fame or something materialistic. It never compares or it never identifies success with an inner feeling of satisfaction and happiness, because it is very difficult to measure it. Whereas the external measures, like how much is in your accounts, how many people follow you on your social media, how many votes you have won in the politics, or how many new businesses you started, what is your revenue and profit and things like that, that definitely is equated with success. But that cannot be equated with happiness. India celebrated success as happiness, happiness that is coming from within. When one is in touch with one's true purpose and living that purpose, then you feel that connect within, then you feel satisfied and happy. And nothing material can ever define that happiness. So our yogis who had nothing except a coping cloth on their, probably on their loin or waist, and no shelter, no food, no future concerns, no bank balances, no nothing. They were happy because that's why they were called as yogi. Yoga is born from this word yuj. Dhatu is yuj. Yuj means to yoke, to connect, to integrate. So their body and minds were integrated with this higher idea of happiness which comes from one's connection with the self. So if you talk about a developed India, it is not an India full of bhogis who are only consuming and consuming and consuming, and because it's a consumption driven economy, everybody is buying left, right and center, and indexes are going up and GDP is going up. That is not the country, developed country we are talking about. We were talking about developed country where people are happy. It's a happy country. Of course, basic happiness comes from food, shelter, clothing, education, employment, health. These basics have to be looked after. I'm not saying that should be ignored. But beyond that, the true happiness comes from people living their purposes. And each person's purpose is different from the other. One is born to do music, one is born to do sports, one is born to do business, one is born to do teaching or military or a political leader. There is aptitude, there is a guna dharma, as we all know, basis which each person should follow one's way of life. And nobody is higher or lower. Everybody is good, everybody is right, everybody is appropriate as long as they're doing the purpose that they're born to do. And material success can never define the respect that they should receive in the society. Unfortunately, it has become like that. You're respected if you're materially successful. But India, old India was not like that. People were successful when they were happy, and they were able to radiate that happiness to everybody who came to their circle. Those people were welcomed everywhere because people felt happy in their presence. Not very far ago, in 25, 30 years back, we would invite an intellectual or a thought leader or a spiritual leader to our homes. What can you gain out of them? They're not going to give you any money. There is no business that you can do with them. Simply the joy of being in the company of such happy people who are living their purpose itself was a joy for families to celebrate them by inviting them. And they'll invite their friends also. Please come and join us. Today such and such person is visiting. Nobody asked how big he is in terms of material success, whether he's a billionaire, whether he's a top tycoon industry. Nothing. They came because they want to just feel that joy of the presence of such a person who is in touch with himself or herself. That is the idea of India's success. So while we have economic and social and all the other parameters in terms of GDP and growth rates and things like that, That's necessary to make sure that everybody has enough to eat and live a comfortable life. If should one fall sick, has access to health care. Should one have children, they should have access to education, decent employment opportunities, dignity of life is there. All this is basics that has to be looked after. But if we stop only at that, then we are not really living up to this great blessing of being born in a country like India, which has much higher definition of purpose of life, happiness and success. This is what I keep telling our children all the time. So you live your purpose. Do what you are born to do. Don't worry whether there is money at the end or fame at the end or power at the end or authority at the end. Don't worry about all these things. Just be good at whatever you are born to do. And somehow or the other, when you are living your purpose, the universe will support you in some way or the other, as long as you are true to your purpose. You see, you are not keeping one eye on the results and one eye on the action. Then you are not going to get either. You simply focus on what you have got to do. Do it with all your heart, all your might, and results will come. That is what is karmanyavadikaraste mapaleshu kadachana. Idea is not that you should not get results, or you get results, you throw it into dustbin. Not like that. Whatever comes out of it as a natural process of having done your job well is fine. There is nothing to reject it. There is nothing like accepting it. It comes by virtue of being part of the process. So we lived like that. That's why we lived anxiety-free lives. We lived tension-free lives. We lived misery-free lives. We lived happy, contented, joyful lives. And that is what attracted the invaders. See, how come this country is so wealthy? And where was all the wealth? Not with the Reserve Bank of India. All the wealth was with temples, with God. Even today, I'm sure they're still trying to figure out how much wealth is there in that Tiruvananthapuram temple, for that matter. But every temple, till they were plundered and looted and whatever happened, they were the richest places. And nobody owned that wealth. It was God's wealth, very clear. Even king felt he is servant of God. And God is the owner of the place, God is the true king, God is the owner of all the wealth of the world. And we are all servants of God, we are all instruments of God. Therefore, temples commanded such amount of control, or in the sense influence over people. And when they decided, they did something, everybody followed. And people who managed these temples were people of highly spiritual achievements. They were not simply some learned priests from some Veda Patishala. They were people of certain spiritual eminence. So they thought, they knew what was right, what was wrong. The kings were counseled by the rishis. They were Raja rishis. They were people in the court who would counsel the kings on various matters from the spiritual point of view, not from material point of view. That is the kind of India which actually had spirituality at the core of everything. Therefore, we were prosperous. Governments did not run schools. Temples ran schools. And free of cost. Governments did not run hospitals. Temples ran hospitals. Free of cost. The food was ensured for everyone in any of these temple premises because it was considered as God's prasadam. And there were no hotels and restaurants and whatever B&B and all that, whatever you call it. It was only temples or any people's homes. You could walk into anybody's home, knock on the door, and they would have this platform outside their house. Every house had that little platform. And anybody could sleep there. That platform was for people, the passers-by, the travelers, to rest while they are traveling. And they will always keep a pot of water over there because even if they can't offer food or nobody asks for it, at least water should be available to anybody who is passing by. And nobody questioned, who are you? Why are you sitting on my portico? What's your business here? Nobody asked these questions. They said, you are a traveler, you are thirsty, drink water and move on. And if somebody was hungry, they knocked on the door, they will also be served a simple meal, whatever was available. Nobody was refused. That is why Aditi Devo Bhava. So everybody was assured of this social protection. And kings did not guarantee it. Constitution did not guarantee it. Nor your political whoever leader guaranteed it. The entire society took the responsibility of guaranteeing the welfare of entire society. And it was driven by temples as the nerve centers, which were richly endowed. There were such wealthy temples. Why did these people plunder our temples? They were rich. All the wealth, treasure of the kingdom was with the temples. Not because it was a nice place to hide, no. Or they had some financial governance mechanism and they were forming financial policies, no. Simply because people thought it all belonged to God. It doesn't belong to me. Everything belongs to God. And all the wealth, everything was with the temples Even kings were the servants of God, and that's how the whole kingdom ran with so much of peace and harmony. Everybody was equal. When we talk about our constitution, equality, liberty, justice, fraternity, where is all that in today's world, you tell me? These are only words that are good for repeating on Independence Day and Republic Day. Where is equality? Have we achieved it in 75 years? No. Where is true liberty? The choice given to everybody to live their lives in accordance with their dharma. Where is that guna dharma? Not available. Fraternity, harmony, brotherhood doesn't exist. Maybe in small pockets. Justice, lesser we talk about it, the better it is. With the number of pending cases in all the courts, where is justice for a common man, for a voiceless, faceless citizen? There is no justice. In 75 years, we haven't achieved it, which India was the embodiment of all these virtues for thousands of years. Till the new modern materialistic idea of success and happiness as wealth and power was introduced into the minds of Indians. Till then, we were all very happy. We did not bother about anything else. I'm not talking about even 1,000. I'm talking about maybe 10,000 years ago. India is very old. That's how people lived. Nobody harmed anybody. We worshipped trees, rivers, mountains, animals. Everything that we could lay our hands on, we worshipped them because we saw divinity in everything. Ahimsa was the foremost virtue that everybody followed. And the idea of greater life beyond the material life of body and mind was ingrained in everybody's mind. Even the lowest so-called category of person in the society also knew that the higher purpose of life is to attain God. And he can attain that by doing his dharma, doing his purpose. And we have great examples, our textbooks or whatever spiritual texts are replete with stories of simple folks, ordinary folks who have achieved extraordinary spiritual heights, simply by doing their Gunadharma. So to me, independence is this. One, the understanding of what is your Gunadharma, so that you can contribute in the best way. Mediocrity will disappear from the society, excellence will happen, because everybody is doing their job passionately with all their interest and enthusiasm. Second thing, all these ideas, equality, justice, fraternity will happen because nobody is doing it selfishly. They're doing it out of selflessness, out of the concern for others. Just follow these to do what you are born to do and do it selflessly. All these values will manifest in the country. We don't have to read and write constitutions. People are living constitutions of the country because they all live with the same thought. Can we create a country like this in next 22 or 23 or 24 years? I wonder. Unless we put some very serious efforts in this direction, I don't think we can continue. Maybe we'll become today whatever 5 trillion, next we will become 28 trillion by 2047. All these are numbers. We have bigger economies. Don't we have United States of America? $25 trillion economy, $85,000 per capita. Where is happiness? Where is peace? Where is joy of living? I don't see that. Maybe in a couple of people, but most of them are just living their lives day to day, managing somehow. And they're rich, but they're not happy. They're powerful, but they're not joyful. Should we create a developed country based on the pre-existing models of developed nations that we are all having? Or should we reinvent ourselves, rediscover our roots, and build India based on those principles of happiness which is equal to an inner satisfaction of doing what you are born to do, and then doing it selflessly so that you contribute positively to the society. Nothing for it for myself. Unless we build our country or the world on these values, there is no redemption. Wars will happen, governments will collapse, there will be rebels, there will be conflict, there will be the haves and the have-nots, and this will go on forever, perpetually, endlessly, because we are doing it all wrong from the beginning. The origins of it is the Indian philosophy. As I mentioned, what is the right thing to do, do that. And do it in the right way. Right to freedom is freedom to do right. And that is what everybody should learn, to do right. That is yoga. You're a student, you're supposed to study, you're supposed to behave in a certain way, conduct in a certain way. That's yoga for you. You are a teacher, you're supposed to teach in a certain way, conduct yourselves in a certain way, and inspire students in a certain way. You are a yogi too. You're a doctor, you can be a yogi. You're a cleaner, you can be yogi. In Mahabharata, we have a Vyada Gita. Butcher can also be a yogi. So all kinds of people can be yogis because India was the land of true yogis. And yoga to us meant a higher purpose and living our life in accordance with this higher purpose while we still do our day-to-day things. So I am thinking of how do we build this developed nation on these principles. Economic prosperity or progress does not guarantee happiness and satisfaction and joy of people. We may still be embroiled in conflicts and wars and issues like this. There won't be any peace and happiness. Should we build a developed nation? I always remind our leaders what an opportunity we have got to do it right this time. Those who have already become developed nations, now they want to change the definition of development. It's very difficult for them. But fortunately, we have not become developed nations still. We still have some way to go, and this is the time we can do it right. Build it on these spiritual values, but for that you need a spiritual leader highly convinced about these ideas. And that's when all these constitutional values will manifest, not by a stroke of pen, not by an assembly which decides these are the values, not by putting it on posters in the walls of the institutions. It won't manifest. It hasn't in 75 years. How will it happen? So what I was looking forward to the talks of the governments and leaders is, are they adding that spiritual component? But none of them, as I said, they might feel it inside, they know it that is right, but saying it publicly is not yet. That is where we find ourselves lacking in becoming what we truly are. And we can lead the world only by that, nothing else. We can lead the world only when we are able to develop ourselves this materially as well as spiritually. I am not ignoring the material progress, it is a must. India of the past was very rich, very wealthy. That's why all these people came and attacked India. If India had nothing to offer, why would these plunderers come? But India was so wealthy, yet it was so happy and simple. It sounds like a paradox. You'll wear cotton, you eat 2 meals a day, you go about doing whatever you have got to do, you don't live in big mansions and wear a lot of jewelry and ornaments, yet your country is rich and everybody has everything available to them. Because society took care of itself by this idea of self-governance, that is true independence. Nobody wanted to do things wrong because they knew the higher purpose would not permit this. If we deviate from the path of dharma, we will miss out on the greater purpose of life, which is to attain moksha. Therefore, let us not do any artha and kama which is not in line with dharma and moksha. Simple. It was so easy. How to bring back these values in these hard-headed modern educationists and academicians is going to be a very tough task. Because all that educational institutions are tasked to do is to create employment so that they generate earnings or revenue, and that's how they add to the economic prosperity of the country. All the idea of education is ending there. And whichever institution is able to do better, getting you better packages after their education, that institution is becoming the prime institution in the country or the world. But that's not the country that we talked about. So my whole concept of developing a nation is actually doing it the other way around. Developing the spiritual core of it, the spiritual roots of it, and the material prosperity, the material shoots will happen. But not many people are convinced about what we are doing. And if we don't prove ourselves right by making this model of our education successful, I don't know if anybody will ever believe in such an idea, because the rest of all is in text only. They are not really manifesting anywhere. The only place that we are trying to manifest, where we have really recreated the ancient India, by making education absolutely free. Nobody pays for anything. You may be a son of a rich person or a poor person. You may be so-called this caste or that caste. You may be coming from a city or the rural area. It doesn't matter to us. You're all equal. Our patients are all equal. We do not discriminate who can pay, who cannot pay, who comes from which background. Nothing like that. Many times I have been advised, please treat only patients who are of this religion or this. I said no. That doesn't work like that. Everybody is equal to us. That is how our ancient India was. And so also in food, Annapurna, we serve in all schools across the country. We never ask which caste you come from or why you should be served. No questions asked. This was the India that we always lived in. So we are trying to recreate that. On material side, yes. As you mentioned, education, health, nutrition, we are able to sort of succeed in some way. But in the spiritual side, unless you all rise to the occasion and lead those simple yet happy lives, and think that all that you have belongs to God alone. And society is the owner of the societal wealth, not an individual. Then there is a possibility of proving this model and showing that this is how prosperity, material and spiritual, can be achieved. And if we are failing at what we are trying to do, who is going to believe our scriptures? Because nobody even tried it in the last couple of 100 years that I know of. Maybe much, much before that this was all happening, but today no. So this time, to turn the ship, the only option is that we should succeed. We have to prove in next 20 years our students, our staff, our devotees should be shining examples of both spiritual enlightenment yet material simplicity. They're happy, joyful, satisfied people and not worried about wealth as their end goal or power or authority as their goal. Service minded, selfless, spiritual people would define what India should look like in the future. I know it looks like an insurmountable task, it looks almost impossible. But everybody who started on a new journey thought it was impossible to undertake it. But somebody had to undertake that journey. When Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa and thought he will make this country independent, do you think there was any remotest chance of country becoming independent? Or Subhash Chandra Bose, against the big mighty British Empire, started making Azadi in the Fauj and went somewhere to Japan and everywhere to collect his people. You thought he could even make a dent in this British system? But they all made the difference by doing whatever they could do in their own way. So also the rishis and the saints and sages, keeping the culture of India, the soul of India alive by singing the glory of God in streets and temples, in connecting people and their hearts through devotion, bhakti and all the wisdom. They kept India alive. They didn't allow it to break into pieces. Tell me one country after the colonial rule that has remained the same as what it was before. No country. Look at Australia, look at Europe, look at any other country, even around ourselves. After an invasion, after a certain colonial force occupied it, their religion changed, their culture changed, the way they eat, dress, talk, walk changed. India is still like what we were. Till 10,000 years ago, whatever mantras were chanted, still it is being chanted in our Veda Pathashala. We still talk about the same scriptures and Upanishads which our ancient forefathers were talking about. We still sing the glory of God as we did in the past. Some changes have happened, of course, in the material living side, but otherwise the core has remained, and that is because of the contribution of these great sages and saints and the temple culture. So my view of India is to let us do it the right way this time. We can't afford to go wrong, because if we go wrong, India is the engine, the whole train will go wrong. All the countries will go wrong if India goes wrong. So this is why I always remind ourselves of what a great responsibility, at the same time, what a great honor it is to lead the world in the right way. So I look forward to 25 years from now, when our students, our people who have been groomed here, trained here, who have been molded here, will lead the way. And by example, by their personal precept, not by talking. Our children, these who are sitting over here today in the enclosure in the National Day celebrations at Red Fort, there were kids sitting there with the T-shirt on their back, My Bharat 2047, Viksit Bharat, like that. And the Prime Minister walked into that enclosure and sort of greeted all of the kids, because his idea was that these are the kids who would be the people in the positions when India becomes a developed nation. Therefore, he wanted to interact and give them the vision that you must create the world that you want to live in. It's in your hands now. So this is the generation that needs to be molded correctly through the right kind of example, through appropriate life. Our people, the richest people, don't live ostentatious and exhibitionist lives, but live simple, moderate and appropriate lives. That will be an example. You can be a billionaire, but you don't have to, show it off. You can still lead a very simple, ordinary life like King Janaka. You can be the mightiest, richest, powerful nation, but yet you have care and concern for everyone. That is possible. Only India can teach that, because other nations did not have this philosophy in the first place, isn't it? So where is that possibility for them? We had these and we lived like this couple of thousands of years ago. Therefore, it's possible for us to, it's there in our DNA. If only we kind of activate it back. And that can happen if you people become selfless and do the purpose for which you are born. Whatever you do to the best of your abilities. Nothing is greater or lesser in God's eyes, as long as it is done with utmost sincerity and with a selfless motive. Every task is divine then. Every act is yoga. And that kind of yogis should be created in this institution and later shared with the rest of the country and the world so that they create inspiration for others also to follow. That is the only hope for the world. There is no other hope. And I keep telling, it may sound audacious when I say from this little hall or this little ashram, we would be actually changing the world in the future. It may sound a little too outlandish. But let me tell you, if we don't do it, nobody is going to do it. No institution in the world. Nobody. And therefore, it's very, very huge responsibility on our shoulders. Let's put our thoughts and hearts together and let's work towards giving the world a new example, a new standard, a new benchmark of how things should be. And truthfully, this is not new. This is the most ancient idea of India. That is how we lived, and that is how we want to live in the future as well. So each one of us becomes more selfless, more sincere. Definitely, this is doable. At least we can start making an influence. It does not need much, like a little salt added to the food enhances its taste. And in the process disappears into the food, doesn't even stand out. Likewise, our students, our staff, our people should enhance the society and yet not stand out. They should become one with the society, merge in it and change it from within. That will happen 20, 25 years down the line. I know the Prime Minister and the people at the helm of affairs, they are doing their part, whatever is their might. There are many other NGOs and organizations, they are doing their part too in improving the lives of people. But we also have a part to do, and that part we must do it well. Because we won't get another chance. If we don't do it now, I don't know when again we'll get such a beautiful opportunity to make a difference. So let us keep some higher goals, higher purpose in life of making a difference to the world by making a difference first within ourselves and then without wherever we are. And simple values are given, cultural values of the institutions and individual values. And today, as I mentioned to you, sincerity of your efforts to do your purpose and doing it selflessly. These are all things which can take us where we want to go. So remind yourself of this wonderful opportunity. It's a blessing to be born in India. Nothing against anybody else who's born in another country, because India is a mother for all countries and cultures. So you are just back, when you come to India, you come to your mother's home. That's how everybody from every country should think of. Similarly, when I go around the world, I don't see them as different. I only see them as our cousins, our brothers, our family members living in other countries. That is how India thought of the whole world as one family. All this is possible only if us here put sincere efforts and selfless efforts. It's possible. And slowly the change is happening. I know it's happening. Right now it's like growing under the earth. It's taking roots. But eventually it will grow out also and become a tree. But till such date we must patiently continue to do what we have got to do without sparing any efforts in our sincerity and selflessness of the purpose. May we together build such a country and the world thereafter. With these words of blessings and with blessings to all the people who are a part of this mission, who are supporting us in so many ways, selflessly, fearlessly and shamelessly, as I said. They are the people who are really to be thanked. This is not possible unless so many people have made silent sacrifices in their own way. Let us realize this and be grateful for all that has been given to us to live our lives today, breathe free air and have choices, to have the liberty of making choices as per our Guna Dharma. All this is possible because of other sacrifices. Now it's our time to do this for the next generation. Let us do it better than what was done before. That is how we pay the debt of gratitude. With these words of blessings, I conclude.